Well, hello everybody, welcome to Red Tool House. On today's video, we're going to talk about how we air dry our wood for different use here on the farm. So, check out what we got. Looks like we're going to play Beat the Thunderstorm today too. So many of you already know that when we mill logs on our mill and take the wood off, it is what we call green lumber. It still has a ton of moisture in it, especially if it was a log or tree that we cut down that still had leaves on it. It's considered green, it has a super high moisture content, and really isn't good to go straight to use that into a project. It can be done, but there's obviously some consequences if you do that. So the best thing to do, of course, is dry it. And there's multiple ways of doing that, but today we're just going to talk about air drying. Well, for us here on Red Tool House, there's really a fork in the road immediately when it comes to how we're going to air dry wood, depending on how we're going to use the wood. And of course species as well. So here at my feet I have a poplar log, and here's a Virginia pine, but back here is a really nice white oak. Over here is a crazy looking red oak that I'm going to open up one of these days on the channel and show you that. The softer woods, the pine, and of course the poplars still considered a hardwood, but it's a softer hardwood. These species of wood is usually what I use in projects outside. So when you see me build corral walls or barn siding, or anything for that matter that goes outside, then I use those species because I want to save my hardwood for the wood shop. So really I call that the difference between project wood or farm wood. So the poplar and pine would be my farm wood, and then the hardwoods would be my project wood. So like this walnut here that my buddy Richard gave me, we're going to mill that at some point, and that will be something that will go into the workshop. Walnut around here is not as common, so it's definitely something that would go in the workshop for woodworking projects. Same with that red oak I already mentioned. Behind here is a little butt log of poplar. We'll mill that up at some point and use that for a project on the farm. In today's video, for the sake of brevity, I just want to talk about farm wood. So one of the farm projects that we had documented in just a recent video is the start of our mobile chicken coop trailer that we want to build. And we're going to build the trailer frame out of wood off the property. So that's what this is stacked up here, the top, the bottom is not. This is some poplar that we milled. We milled some 2x7s and we milled some 2x4s, and those are true dimensions, 2" by 7" and 2" by 4". So those have been stacked here for a couple days, and your question may be, well, why don't you just stack it up, leave it, and then when you're ready to use it, use it? Well, you can, but let me show you something, what happens here. So if I've got these 2x4s and these 2x7s laying here, and they've been here, like I said, a couple days, they feel dry to the touch, they look dry to the touch. But if I start to move some of these over, you can see the difference in the patina already. See this edge that was exposed right here? How that's brown where it's been exposed to the sun, and then right here is actually wet to the touch. This feels like somebody sneezed on it. So you can look down that board and see just the next board down is wet, and this one's going to be even wetter. So it obviously it doesn't allow the moisture to escape well when it's stacked like this. So I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the ideal way to prepare wood for air drying, whether it's going to go in the workshop or really whether it's going to work on a farm project. I didn't do that on this poplar log, and there's reasons why, but let's go down a list real quick of the best practices you should do when you're cutting wood and want to air dry it. So step number one, of course, is cut the log as soon as you drop it. So in the situation with my poplar, it'd been on the ground a while, and it already had some end checking. But ideally, if you're going to cut a tree down, you should bring it in and put it on the mill shortly afterwards, days afterwards. The reason why you want to cut it immediately is pretty obvious in this red oak. This red oak has actually been on the ground, well, it's been here, I think almost a year, I believe. It's actually been laying on the ground because this was a windblown tree. It's actually been laying on the ground for almost 2 years. So you can see here, there's a lot of end checking, cracks, and those type of things. We even got some fungus starting to build up there. The bark is rotting. There's been a little bit of infestation of ants. So obviously laying it here and leaving it this long, I'm going to have those type of issues. But even if this was just a couple weeks lying here waiting to be milled, then we'd start to see this end checking. So the cause of the end checking is the fact that water is escaping through the ends of the log faster than it's coming out the sides of the log. So why is that? Well, partially because there's bark wrapped around it that kind of keeps some of that moisture in. But really, if you remember in biology class, that trees are just obviously large plants, and they have all of these fibers, or these straws, which are called xylem and phloem, that run vertically through the tree. So if you can imagine, if you picked up a bundle of straws and grouped them together, that's how a tree is made up. So obviously the water is going to go out of the ends faster than it comes out of the sides. And that's why when you go to massive log yards where they're bringing these logs in by the truckload, and they may not be milling them all every day, you'll see that they have these sprinkler systems set up in the yard to keep the logs actually wet. So it's just constantly sprinkling water on them. If they're going to be a good veneer log, then they want to keep them as wet as possible so they don't start to end check. Well, tip number 2 would be, as you bring the log into the log yard, take some sort of sealant and coat the ends of the log. So you're just basically going to paint over the ends. And there's specific sealants you can buy. There's nice paraffin sealants, there's latex base, there's oils base. There's really anything that you can use. It all depends on what kind of money you want to spend. But if you look at the wax sealants and some of those things that just stay on the surface, they don't penetrate the wood and stain it further up. So if this was a really nice high-end, I don't know, some curly ash or something like that, or a curly maple, and I wanted every inch of it, then yeah, it would make sense to use a paraffin wax sealant type of thing. Versus if I use something oil-based, it's going to soak up into that wood a little bit and discolor it, and I would lose some of that. You've probably never seen me coat a log on these videos, and really I'm not dealing with really high-end hardwood, on the channel at least, so I don't mess with that. What I do to keep the end checking, to keep that from being an issue, I always cut my logs 1 foot to 1.5 foot longer than the finished product I need. So I could just cut off that end checking. And ideally, you don't have to coat the log when you bring it in, but if you're going to saw it, that makes the most sense. 2 swipes on a large surface versus after you mill, go paint the ends of the boards. Either one will work, but it just makes more sense. It's easier to paint the log before you mill it. So the next best practice tip is to stack and sticker right off the mill. So as you saw in that video, I just brought these boards over and put them here with the plan to come back and stack them. Ideally, what I should have done is stickered and stacked them immediately after milling. That's why I cut all of these boards, these small pieces of wood, in the beginning of the video and brought those in, because these are my sticker boards, or we call them rick boards. But literally all you're doing is just making spacers, and you want to lay these boards out consistently, and you put your milled boards on top with spacers in between, and that allows airflow to come through and allows the board to dry out. So you don't get this scenario here where the top board's really dry on the face, but underneath it's wet. That just wants to promote that board to cup. It's actually going to lift up because the cell structure on the top of the board is drying out and shrinking while the other isn't. So it naturally wants to turn it into a smiley face. So you can get, it's funny when you look at the details of rick boards or sticker boards, you can get really into some serious money. You can buy the composite stuff that is super consistent. It doesn't stain. Yeah, that's the one concern. If you had a certain species of wood and it was wet and you put another species that was wet, some of that, the tannins, say if it was an oak, the tannins in the oak could soak up into the poplar and stain where the sticker board came in contact. If I was producing this wood for resale, I would definitely take that in consideration. Again, it's going to be a chicken coop, so I'm not that concerned. I'm actually using some dried pine. It's air dried just because it's been laying up against the barn for quite a few months. Just cut it up, A, to get it out of the way, and B, it's going to work fine for stickers. So I'm using this slab cut off of poplar from the log that we milled our frame out of as a sacrificial board. So that's why I've got it laid down there first. So I'm going to take my stickers and just space them out. You can go 24 inches, 36 inches. I'm doing it looks like about 30 inches I think I'm doing. But the key is be consistent. So you can see I've laid out 5 stickers. So everything from now on should be 5. And I want to start with my bigger boards first. I'm going to start with my 2x7s. Which if you want to know why I cut 2x7s, you got to go back and watch the video. Ooh, that was still heavy. So it's kind of like building a Dagwood sandwich. I don't know why I think of that. Maybe I'm hungry. So I ripped all these pine boards roughly the same width, but not exactly, because I didn't worry about the last cut. But since I know the thickness is all the same, then I'm making sure I orient that board that way. So you can imagine, since we're dealing with a wet product here, an organic product, if we had stickers that were different height and we put all this weight on, then we're kind of promoting a bacon shape. As much as I like bacon, I don't like it in my wood. So my 2x7s are almost 14 feet long, and my 2x4s are just under 10. So you can see I'm ending short. So I'm going to move this sticker back. Not the most ideal, but better than letting that end hang over and cause some warpage. And we're going to go too wide with the 2x4s. Horsefly. Oh, sucker! So you can see here with this stack of wood, now air can move freely between all the boards. All four sides are exposed to the elements so they can dry out. Again, if this was project wood, woodshop wood, I would have even dusted all the sawdust off of it, because this rain I'm about to get thrown down on me is going to soak into that sawdust and could possibly promote a little bit of mold, which would discolor the surface. Not a big deal for what we're using it for. If I really wanted to get fancy, I'd take a piece of my tin over there and put it on top to shield the rain from it. But really the next thing I need to do, if I don't get soaking wet, is put more weight on this, because these boards are going to be sacrificial if I don't. They're going to start to warp and curve. They're going to help iron out the ones beneath. You may be asking, what about warp sideways? Well, again, if I was milling a bunch of wood, then I would rick a bunch of boards up side by side. Instead of 2 wide, maybe going 8, 10 wide. Where the outer ones may have an issue with warping, but the inside ones wouldn't, because the boards butted up against them would help kind of keep that in check. Let's see if we can pick up this monstrosity of a white oak here. Last time I tried to do this, I think I gave birth to something. Holy crap, that's heavy. I'm gonna get soaking wet. So we can knock the camera down. I ran out of stickers, so I'm not going to be able to put stickers between this. Like Legos make it all fall over here. So really it just becomes a situation of throw as much junk on it as possible to weight it down or knock it over. So how dry am I trying to get with this wood? Well, again, since it's an outside project, moisture is usually measured in percentage. So if it was going to be something I was going to take in the workshop and say build a table for somebody or a headboard, then I want that percentage below 10%. Ideally 6 to 8% is what I'm looking for. And I have a little moisture meter that I use in the workshop that I can put on the board, and through radio waves it'll actually read that. That meter only goes to 30%. Out here, 20 to 30 to even 35% would be fine. If I could chart this on a graph and show that as soon as this log is cut, the percentage of moisture at its maximum, and then it's a ski slope coming down with a lot of moisture being released within the first couple days, couple weeks, and then it starts to level out. So air drying like this outside in West Virginia with our humid weather that we have, I could probably get down to 30%, 25% maybe, if I left it here for an entire year. Now, if I left it right here for an entire year, carpenter ants are going to wear it out. Since I'm going to use this a lot sooner than that, then I'm hoping we get down to 30, 35%. We'll see. These boards are already much lighter, maybe 40, 45%. I'm not going to be able to gauge it because my moisture meter won't go that high. Now, if it was woodworking wood, then it would go in the barn and be rigged just like that, but be under cover of the barn. The barn is dry. Whew, man, that was close. I think we may need to wrap this up. Real quick. Woodworking wood in the barn, stacked, dry, wind blows through, it dries out, take it in the workshop, stack it up, dries out, get it down below 10%, turn some furniture into it. Okay, everybody, have a great day. We'll talk to you later.